Hi, welcome to Wellspring on the Air. I'm Tova, president and co-founder of Wellspring, and with me today for our program, we have two great Wellspring therapists. We have Kaara Kiddoe. Hi, Kaara.
Hi.
And we have Salima Harris. Hi, Salima.
Hello.
And today's show is about empathy. It's a building block for a healthy life. And this show is really oriented to parents who are trying to build these blocks in their children to have healthy lives, building empathy in our children. But the truth is the show applies to everybody because all of us are more healthy when we have empathy with others. So today we're going to talk about the difference between girls and boys and how to help them develop empathy, as well as we can all learn some hints for ourselves in this process. So before we jump in, I'd like each of our therapists to just briefly introduce themselves. Kaara, you're going to kind of be leading us today, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaara, and I have been with Wellspring since 2016. I specialize in working with couples and seeing individuals who've experienced trauma. And I myself have two little kids, a 6-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy.
Okay, great. And Salima, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Salima. I've been with Wellspring for about a year. My concentration or area of focus is couples and families, and parenting as well. I am a military wife of 12 years. I have 3 children. My 2 oldest are girls, ages 17 and 13, and my youngest is a boy, age 7. And just really honored to be here and just talk a little bit about empathy.
Okay, so at Wellspring, I've been here a long time, but here's the key for this show is that I have 3 children, 2 who are in their 30s, a boy and a girl. My youngest is still finishing college. So we are empty nesters, and I have 2 grandchildren who are 4 and 6. So I think the 3 of us have a few things we can add. We've at least suffered through things but we didn't get right?
Yes.
Okay. So to remind you again, this show today is on empathy, how to develop it in our kids, the differences with boys and girls. And so let's dive in with empathy and let's just talk about it. So Kaara, why don't you just introduce this topic to us and tell us about it?
Yes, so this is such a great topic. Empathy is really being able to join in someone else's feelings and emotions in a very deep way. It goes beyond just simply being like, oh, you're hurt, to really almost being able to place yourself completely in that person's shoes to really fully embrace what it is that they're going through, which is really a skill set and a muscle that we can actually develop and grow in. And this doesn't just apply to kids, as you said, Tova. This is something that we all need to grow in. I think the world would be a better place if we had more empathy.
So if I cry in a movie, that's really actually a good thing then, right? Even if my husband's laughing at me.
Exactly.
Exactly. I feel for that character. All right, that's good. So empathy. All right, go ahead and dive us into this and keep teaching us.
Yeah, I love the scripture, Romans 12:15, that says, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn, and live in harmony with one another. So really just seeing that the idea of relating to people on an emotional level is actually a biblical concept, right? And I want to talk a little bit about boys and empathy before we get into girls and empathy. So with boys during adolescence, that is the stage that they tend to think more about themselves. And as I said before, because empathy is a muscle that you can actually practice and learn to build, it is better to do that in the younger years. If time has passed, we can still work on it, but it's a little bit easier when kids are younger to teach them empathy. Boys 5 to 8 are more loving, caring, tender, imaginative than any other point in their development. And I remember reading this and kind of being like, oh, really? Like So they're going to grow up and no longer be this loving, caring, that phase that they're in. It's almost like, oh, but that's the stage to capitalize in.
That's good. Well, yeah, because when your boys are 14 or 15, you're going to say, what happened to my little boy? And that's what you're talking about. So train them well during that little boy stage, right? Okay, that's great advice. Keep going. What else are stumbling blocks for these?
Well, yeah, so boys do have some stumbling blocks, as we know. Competition is a big one, right? Like boys by nature are very, very, very competitive. And we have to remember that being competitive is not a bad thing. Sometimes we can see it as a negative, but it's really part of who they are. And then another big one is the definition, right? Like we live in a society where there's a very narrow definition of masculinity. And because of that, it really forces boys and men to live in a box, to almost shrink their emotional capacity to fit into that box because of our narrow definition of masculinity. The book actually mentioned the movie, the video. It's on Netflix, The Mask You Live In. And it's a documentary that talks about how boys, have to adjust and shrink themselves and cover their emotions and hide their feelings and really kind of show this very manly, macho disposition. And it's really a mask, and that was one great thing that the documentary brought out. And I highly recommend parents of boys to look at that documentary.
So let me interrupt at that point and say a couple of things for our listeners. So first of all, this show will be on our website and on our podcast channel, but it'll also be there as a blog where you can type in empathy, find the blog, and those resources will be linked there so you can find those. One of the resources she mentioned, we also need to say when we say the book. So one of the reasons we're doing this series is because we're trying to put material out for parents. And the book that we have, hold it up there, Kaara, just hold it closely, Are My Kids on Track by Dr. Sissy Goff and a few others. And so we are using this book as a nice foundational training for parents. We run parenting groups on an ongoing basis for this. If you're interested in that, you can find that on our website. But the book, Are My Kids on Track, is what we're talking about. And this is one of the chapters. One of the 4 building blocks for emotional milestones is empathy. And so that's why we're addressing this today. So Kaara, so you're saying that there's a great window for boys. It's not hopeless later, but there's a great window for teaching them, and that they do have stumbling blocks like competition. So competition says don't be soft on your enemy, right? And it reminds me of my daughter, who was a soccer player, and she was the goalkeeper, so she was very competitive, and so she knocks the person down and they knock her down, and then she stands over them and reaches down and picks them back up. And my father was like, her father, my husband, said, I would never have done that. I would never have reached to the other person and helped them up after I, nailed them in competition. And so I think you're dead on. It kind of, it's mixed messages we're giving them, but you can compete and win and still have empathy. So did you cover all of building stumbling blocks for boys?
There's one more: action.
Okay.
And this is very common. I'm sure most married women can relate, that boys are fixers, and then they grow up into be husbands that want to fix things. And then when we're asking them, as wives, we're just like, we just want you to listen. And they don't understand, like what is the value in just listening if I can't fix it? And so that can be a stumbling block for empathy, as you can see how it plays into relationships, even your marriage, and just not even being able to think about somebody's feelings without trying to figure out how to fix them.
So there's a tendency to not want to hear the feelings. Like there's no value in hearing the feelings because I can't do anything to fix them. So why would I listen to them, right? So I think that's a great stumbling block. And what are some of the building blocks for boys?
Well, as we said earlier, just practice. Practice. The book has a quote that says, practice makes progress. And this is such a great phrase because it really tells you that practice is like the key to everything when you think about it, right? Anything that you want to get good at, we need to practice. And so we can do that. We can help our boys do that with just using even books, stories, movies, using the characters that we see and just noting like, how do you think that person felt when, you know, and looking at outside in the movies and highlighting the different feelings and emotions that the different characters experience. Those are like really just practical ways to introduce concepts and ideas to boys, literally understanding and helping them to know the difference between being nice and being kind, because being nice could be kind of superficial. You know, we can almost like put on a mask, yeah, to be nice, to be polite. But being kind is really a deeper, more authentic way of interacting with people. And it creates a lot more respect and dignity for each other when we're able to like practice kindness.
Okay. And how about girls and empathy?
Well, you know, girls have some challenges too. We tend to look at girls as like, oh, you know, they got it. Like, you know, because we tend to be a little bit more emotional than boys, because we do have a wider definition when it comes to being a girl. But one of the challenges with girls is narcissism. And that's the idea of just really being self-centered. And this tends to peak around middle school, where girls become less aware of everybody else and more about me and what's going on with me. And it's worth to note that this is normal. This is age appropriate. This is developmentally appropriate. So there's nothing wrong with your teenager that she's a little bit self-absorbed. We just don't want her to remain self-absorbed, you know, but parents see that as just a regular part of development. And note that it is also an area that they can grow out of.
That's encouraging.
Yes, and the other part of narcissism is not just the girls and them thinking about themselves, but us as parents, right? Are we able to model and mirror empathy? Do we walk around in our lives paying attention to, you know, the people that most people don't notice? Most people may not pay attention to the servers, the cleaners, the people who help us. You know, are we in our everyday life like mirroring what empathy should look like? And that's where they will ultimately learn it from us.
It's true. I think of the scripture that Philippians 2:4, let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others, right? So it's a biblical concept you're presenting here. Do you have any suggestions, right? We're about to take a break, but about building blocks for girls, anything that would really help us build that into our girls?
Yeah. So one is awareness, right? Like just being able to understand and regulate our emotions and feelings. That awareness is going to then allow us to see past ourselves, to then be able to look at someone else, to be able to see what else is going on with that person. Being humble. Again, it's like the scripture. It's exactly Philippians 2:4. It's taking the lesser position and esteeming somebody else higher than yourself, right? And it's practice, just like the boys. It's the same for all of us. It's practice makes progress, and to be able to, you know, see everyday opportunities as learning opportunities to practice empathy.
Practicing and noticing. So before we take a break here, Salima, did you want to add anything particular here?
Yes, just wanted to piggyback on Kaara's practice, even with perspective. A lot of new behaviors require practice, but the more we practice it, the more it'll become instinctive, and we'll be able to reach it better in times of distress. And so when we find ourselves not practicing it, we can actually regress into those stumbling blocks and not achieving empathy in the way that we want to. So practice as adults, practice as kids, and even when it's hard at first, you know, but we're developing that muscle. So that's important.
Well, good. That's very good. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Hi, I'm Tova with Wellspring on the Air, and I have two great therapists with me today, Kaara and Salima, and today we are talking about empathy. So if you missed this show, the beginning of this show, find us on your favorite podcast channel, Wellspring on the Air, or go to our website. You can look up empathy on our blog, and it'll link you to an article about this, or it'll link you to this recording, and you can catch up this whole thing. But we're talking about empathy, particularly in terms of teaching our kids how to develop that. Kaara talked about some of the little differences and nuances between boys and girls. We know they're not always that way. We're not saying it's all boys or all girls, but there are differences in their learning styles. And the biggest thing we said was that the best way to develop empathy is to practice it. It's to teach it, to model it ourselves, and to practice it over and over. For boys, Kaara told us when they're a little bit younger, it's easier to do that. And so that's great. And girls, sometimes during their teen years, particularly in middle school, may really struggle with seeing things from somebody else's perspective. So it's our job to help them kind of to see that and to notice and say, what might that girl be feeling right now? Or what about that boy? And we help them practice it. So this last section, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about practical ideas for building these skills. So let's go with that. Just give us some of the best ideas you've got, Kaara, and we will build on those.
Yes, so just some real practical ideas for building empathy, whether boys or girls or even just us, practicing gratitude. I love that one because I think like a daily practice of gratitude is great from just the perspective of us being thankful, but also thanking others, right? Thanking people who have done something for us, writing a letter, actually verbalizing our thanks. I don't think we even do that enough. And we could do it as simple as just with each other in our homes. You know, husbands and wives could practice saying thank you aloud to each other. We can say thank you to our kids. You know, what a novel idea. You know, it's just even within our little circle, we can start there and then expand out to offer gratitude.
I love that because you don't always think, I wouldn't have put gratitude with empathy, but if I'm thanking someone, I'm thinking about what it was like for them to have done it. What was it like for mom to cook me dinner and spent an hour doing it? So when I thank her, thank you for spending a whole hour doing my dinner tonight. That's gratitude and empathy put together, right? Thank you for helping me with my homework, or us asking the kids. Thank you for sitting at dinner when you really wanted it to be with your friends, right? And you're empathizing with what it cost them to be a part of your family and to obey or things like that. I love that. I love that. What's your next practical idea?
I love this one too, family meetings, right? Because this one is different for me because I didn't grow up with this concept, and depending on what cultural background you come from, family meetings may sound like what? Like I, as the adult, I'm going to have entertain my children's opinions. It you know, for me culturally, it even sounds a little far-fetched, but I love it because it really teaches kids how to negotiate. Right? Because if we give them an opportunity, us as adults, to hear their opinion, we are modeling to them, you know, the opportunity to listen, take into consideration someone's opinions, be able to be influenced by someone's opinions, where it's not just about me and it's not just about you. And if you have more than one kids at the table, you know, they can even negotiate with each other. And that can be really, you know, a little bit challenging for younger kids to, you know, not put their own needs first, right? It's like at that age, younger kids, it's all about me. And even older, when they become teenagers, it's all about me too. And so just using family meetings as an opportunity to listen, and you have to hear what the other person is saying, take that into consideration. You have to compromise. You have to maybe even forego what it is that you initially wanted, or delay instant gratification in a lot of ways. But it's a great way for families for kids even to just feel like their voice is also is worthy of being heard, you know?
It reminds me of two really good sayings. And then Salima, I'm curious if you do family meetings. So let's try it. So one saying that I love from my mentor, Pat Ritzmut, said, everybody has their way, say, but not everybody has their way. It's a family kind of a statement. Everybody has their say, but not everybody has their way. And sometimes we feel like if we let people say it, we're kind of letting them have it or give it away. And that's not true. We're just letting everyone get to speak, and then a decision will be made by the parents or negotiated amongst them or whatever. But letting everybody speak. And the other saying is everybody counts, not more or less than anybody else. So we have roles that somebody counts more, but over time, everyone in the family should count. And family meetings are a great way to do that. Now, Salima, do you all have family meetings? What do you think about family meetings?
I love family meetings. I grew up in a home where family meetings were a part of daily lives, whether the topics were really serious or just really general and light. But and I grew up in a family of 6 in my household. So a lot of opinions and things of that nature, but it was really just a wonderful time of sharing, of being with one another and just kind of decompressing from the day. And so I have implemented that into my family where we eat dinner together, and we definitely have family meetings all the time. Topics are topics that my kids may not want to discuss, it just be, oh, do we have to talk about this? Yes, we do. But also it's a time to just share and just talk about their day. And even though, because I have 2 teenagers, they may feel like, oh, I don't want to do this. They really value it. They really value it. And sometimes as parents, we don't think they get it, but they do. They really appreciate it.
That's good. All right, Kaara. So as we kind of, I know you've got 12 ideas here. We're on 2, so you're going to have to talk fast. Tell us some of the other ideas you've got.
Okay, so we'll just run through really quickly. But a few other ideas are compassion, right? Being able to volunteer in your local community. Encouragement, writing thank you notes to soldiers, kids in the hospital, encouragement notes to kids in the hospital, telling stories by, like I said, with the movies and storybooks, using those to talk about empathy. Using conflict as an opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes, right? So like, this is a good one. When we or our kids have experienced conflict, to be able to ask them to think about the other person that they're in conflict with. What is their experience like? Because the truth is, when I am upset, I really don't want to think about the other person. Mm-hmm. I want the other person to help me not be upset, right? And it's a very hard thing to ask someone when they are upset or they actually were hurt by someone to even put themselves in the person's shoes who hurt them. That's a real big ask, but it's really something that we could use because conflict is a part of life and it's going to happen, right? Whether it's in our home or outside of our home, it's going to happen. And we all have that experience with conflict. Some of us shy away from it, but it really is a good building block opportunity.
It really is. And I think sometimes if the direct ask is a little hard, you could kind of just wonder about it yourself. Like, I wonder what they're thinking right now, and you just posed it as an idea to think about it, not asking directly when they're like, I want you to take my side, and so instead you're just, gosh, I wonder what's going on in their heads, right now, and that kind of thing. Just a little lighter touch if it's too hard of an ask. So I think those were great things. Encouragement, telling stories, working in stories, conflict. What else did you have in mind?
I would say thoughtfulness, right? And this goes back also to as adults, as parents, being able to model that in our everyday life. So, do we open the doors for someone else? Do we find opportunities to help people who may need help, right? Just practically. I like this. There was this concept in the book called Zoom In and Zoom Out. So zoom in one weekend and think about how you can help someone close to you, and then zoom out by helping someone outside of your circle, right? And that's like a really creative way. We could even use the family meetings for that, right? To even talk about how can we help someone who is outside of our home or even outside of our network. volunteering at the homeless shelter, cooking meals for the families in the Ronald McDonald House, for example. There's like so many ways that as a family, we can practice empathy in real life. And it just be a part of our value system and not just something that, we're teaching by the way, but it's something that we're actually living out.
That's great. That's great. Salima, did you have anything else you wanted to add along those lines?
Well, I thought Kaara's, because she had so many, were so great. So not really, just again, just continuing to be thoughtful was the main one that popped up in my head as she was describing them, because that's part of empathy, not just thinking about ourselves, and we're not dismissing ourselves when we think about others, but also considering what someone else may have felt to allow us to have perspective. And that could maybe help, help us with self-regulation and just speaking more calmly and being approaching and solving whatever's going on more adaptively.
That's great. Well, Kaara, any last words for us?
Just continue to, I would say, practice, use just everyday opportunities that present itself. Don't shy away from conflict. Be willing to lean into it and just open your eyes, right? The opportunity to practice empathy is all around us. Just living in Miami too, we can pass a lot of homeless people on the street, right? Every day. And that's an opportunity for us to do it right there and then, right? We don't even have to really go out of our way to practice empathy.
It's true. It's true. Well, it's time to close out the show. I think it's been a very good show. Thank you, Kaara and Salima, for joining me on this program about empathy. Again, if you missed this show, you can find it on our blog on wellspringmiami.org or on a podcast channel, Wellspring on the Air. And just go ahead and get the whole thing, or you can get resources for the books that we're talking this through for parenting. Are My Kids on Track? Dr. Sissy Golf and a few others who've written that. Lots and lots of good information and practical ideas for our boys, for our girls, for ourselves on how to develop empathy so we can live healthy lives in community with others. So it's time to wrap up. This is Tova with Wellspring on the Air, because hearts and minds matter.